Human metabolism is hardwired. We're all born with the same operating system, and we're all supposed to go through these 4 phases. And what makes us different, what makes our metabolism all over the map, is body fat. Because when you add extra body fat at any age, 5 years old, 10 years old, 18 years old, 21, 30, 40, 50, 60, when you throw in extra body fat, what it does is it actually puts a drag on the metabolism, and the metabolism slows down. So it is not that you are born with a slow metabolism and so therefore you gain extra weight. It is that the extra weight that you gain slows down your metabolism. It's completely the reversal of the script that we thought.
Dr. William Li, welcome to the show. As I was saying, this is an absolute honor to share this conversation with you, as I've been diving very deep into your content. And I'm just so happy to bring the knowledge onto this podcast as well, and to just spread the word of wisdom of everything you share. So welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Erica. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so your books have really captivated my attention. I am big on health myself, but I also love bringing onto the show anything to do with health, because I believe health is the pathway to living our optimum self. You must address your health to address every area in your life. And so your book, your first book was Eat to Beat Disease, and then your more recent one, Eat to Beat Your Diet, which I know what I really want to touch on today is your more recent books to help others learn how our metabolism is affected by our lifestyle and, of course, the foods we eat, which actually your book is nothing to do with dieting, which I love the most about this. It's actually an anti-diet book, which I think is really the key, is creating a lifestyle that doesn't seem too complicated, because it really, honestly, when you learn the things that you share today, it's really that simple, like adding in the right things, like foods that love you back, and eliminating the things that don't. And you talk a lot about this. So I would love to just start by that concept. Why do you consider this not a diet book? And why is this book what everybody needs to learn today?
Yeah. So first of all, a little bit of introduction about me. I'm actually a vascular biologist, which means that I study blood vessels, and our blood vessels are a 60,000 mile channel, the highways and byways of life itself. So anything we breathe goes through our blood vessels to go to our organs, and anything we eat, the nutrients that should go into our bloodstream. And also that's how we get to feed ourselves for health or for disease. And so this is really the thesis, the theme of what I talk about, is how when you talk about food and health, it's not just about the food. It's really about how our body responds to what you put inside it. So my first book, Eat to Beat Disease, was really to introduce people to the fact that we're hardwired with systems that protect our health every single day. From the day we're born to our very last breath, we've got at least 5 health defense systems: our circulation, our stem cells, our gut microbiome, our DNA, and our immune system, that are basically swashbucklers, just like the 3 musketeers. These are the 5 musketeers that are riding on horseback, just keeping away all the bad guys and protecting the castle. And that castle is our health. So in my second book, Eat to Beat Your Diet, I wanted to write a sequel to say, all right, beyond just helping your body do its job, do the heavy lifting, stay healthy, how do we get to that next level, which really has to do with metabolism? Now, most of us have some idea of what metabolism is, right? I mean, metabolism is actually really complicated, but it's the term that no matter who you are, whether you're, the person who is studying metabolism or studying medicine, or the doctor, or whether you're the mom, that's actually just trying to get the house in order when the baby's asleep, we all kind of have this common notion that metabolism is sort of how much energy we have. It's tied to our food and our body weight and how we perceive ourselves. And so there's this whole kind of social mythos around what metabolism. Well, I wrote this book, Eat to Beat Your Diet, in order to be able to crack open and bust the myths that are out there. And as I was writing, the most amazing thing is I started to realize the more we dig into what modern research tells about the metabolism, the more we realize how these myths are just not true. So let me just throw out a couple of myths and see, Erica, if you agree with me, because I used to believe these as well. I used to think that you're born with a fast or a slow metabolism. Some people are lucky. They're skinny as a rail. They can eat anything. They're born with a fast metabolism. And other people, that used to talk to me about their weight, their struggle, like, oh man, I got the short end of the stick when I was born. I've been struggling with my weight the whole time, and I'm going to gain weight if I just look at a piece of food, right? You've
Mhm.
heard that before.
Mhm.
And that's sort of like you're born with a fast or slow metabolism. Now, if you are a parent and you've had teenagers, you realize that at a certain point, uh, uh, teenage kids are eating two dinners. They are filled with energy, bouncing off the wall, and they're growing like weeds, right? And so you always think, oh, that's the point in life where your metabolism must be going sky high because you're
Right.
growing naturally, more energy, more nutrition, more dinners that are needed. All right. And by the way, those growing teenagers that are like eating two or three dinners, they're not always eating the healthiest stuff because they're also going out and eating the drive-through stuff as well. We're not just seeing it. All right, so metabolism is going up when you're a teenager, right? Then the other idea is that like that, whatever the freshman 15, and then you get into middle age, and most people that I know, when they start hitting 40 or 50 or they're getting to 60, they go, "Oh man, I'm at that age where there's nothing I can do. I know my body's going to change. Going to be fighting my metabolism. My metabolism is going to slow down and it's going to change the way that I look. And there's nothing I can do about it. Oh, maybe work out some more. But it's going to be an uphill battle. Right. And that's the idea, is that when you hit middle age, your metabolism is going to thwart you. It's going to slow down and you're going to gain weight. And that's why people's bodies weight change. Well, so do you agree? Those are the common myths that are out there, common ideas.
Absolutely. And I know everybody listening right now, that was one of the things I was going to bring up is most people say like at age 40, it's like downhill and our body changes and we can't drop weight like we used to. And, yes.
All right. Well, so get ready for the mic drop, because this is actually what happened when I started to realize the research shows us that our body is hardwired for metabolism the same way that we're hardwired for health. Now, what do I mean by hardwired? What I mean is that when your dad's sperm met your mom's egg and you became a ball of cells, as your body was forming, so too was your metabolism. And your metabolism was formed in the exact same way that your kidneys were formed, and your hormonal system was formed, your endocrine system, and your circulation was formed. And when we were born, not surprisingly, what we now know is that we're all born with the exact same metabolism, because it is the operating system that comes out of the box. So when we were born, it's just like when you pull a laptop out of the box. So let's say, Erica, you and I are going to buy the same model of laptop. You go wherever you are to your computer store and bring it home and bust open the box. I do the same thing with wherever I am. We plug it in. When it's time to boot up the computer, when it's charged, that operating system out of the box, the same model of computer, should be exactly the same. That's exactly how our metabolism is. And it's not, and it's, although it's kind of a surprise, it actually makes a lot of sense. Our hearing is designed to be the same when we're born. Our sense of taste is the same. Our hormones actually function pretty much the same way, so long as we're healthy. There are some people, there are obviously exceptions to the rule, but
Right.
our metabolism is hardwired at birth. Now, until just 2 years ago, we assumed that after you're born, your metabolism is just going to run its course, however it's going to run, right? Like, some people are lucky, some people are unlucky. Well, it turns out that in about a year ago, it was published the most audacious experiment on human research, clinical study of metabolism, was performed and published. And a guy named Herman Ponzer out of Duke University worked with, and wait for this, 90 other researchers across 20 countries. And they studied 6,000 people. Now, over 20 countries, you're talking about different races, different cultural background, different food, different holiday habits. And here's the amazing thing: they studied in those 6,000 people individuals that were ranged in age from 1 week old to 90 years old. That's the entire human lifespan. And they
Right.
studied them all exactly the same way to see what their metabolism was. They gave them a drink of water. Now, not just a regular glass of water, they gave them water, and water is H2O. H is the hydrogen, O is the oxygen. I mean, you probably don't need to be a chemist to know that. And what they did as researchers, they tweaked the hydrogen, they tweaked the oxygen, gulp down the water, and you in your body, your metabolism processes those atoms, the hydrogen, oxygen, the water, in a way that you can measure in your breath, you can measure in your blood, and you can measure in your urine. Okay, so through the breathing, the blood, and the pee, you can actually get a measurement of your metabolism from 1 week old to 90 years old, and every age in between.
Mhm.
6,000 people, 20 countries, 90 researchers studying this in exactly the same way. And here's what they found: when they looked at metabolism, they found the first results were metabolism of these 6,000 people were all over the map. There was no rhyme or reason to it, and it was just like you might expect. Everyone's got a different metabolism. But here was the genius move that they did, because we now live in the era of supercomputing, right? Like everyone knows that our computing power is like unbelievable. So what they did is they built an algorithm, and they said for every individual in the result, we're gonna actually do an adjustment, and we're gonna put them into an algorithm. And here's what we're gonna do: we're gonna, because we know their sex and their age and their height, we're going to calculate how much body fat they're supposed to have, and then we're going to actually use this algorithm to subtract out the effect on the metabolism of excess body fat. In other words, from all these results that are all over the map, if you were to remove the effect of excess body fat, what do you get? What is the metabolism like once you remove excess body fat?
Hmm.
And when they did that, it was amazing. It was like pulling the cloak off the statue of David for the first time to see what human metabolism really looks like. And what was found in the research community was found is that all humans go through only 4 phases of hardwired metabolism. And these 4 phases tell us exactly what happens when we're born, when we're teenagers, and when we're in that middle-aged 40-year-old line. And guess what? It's nothing like we thought when you
Right.
reveal that truth. So,
And so the four stages, what are these?
okay. So first is that everyone's born with the same metabolism. But what happens in the first year of life, Erica, is that a baby's metabolism in their first year goes sky high. It's like a rocket going up. In fact, it shoots so high that at 1 year old, a 1 year old's metabolism is 50% higher than what it's going to be when they're an adult. Amazing, right? And by the way, metabolism is where you're drawing in all this energy. This is why we need to be careful of what we feed our babies,
Mm.
what are exposed to our kids. Obesogens, endocrine disrupting factors. Think about the microplastics, all the things in the sippy cup, even the stuffed animal that's shedding and off gassing fumes. Oh my gosh, when you think about how much information a baby is intaking at every moment of their life with a super high metabolism, this research result gives us a pause to rethink, what are we exposing our kids to, right? So that's
Yeah.
number one. Phase one is 0 to 1 years old. And then from 1 to 20 years old, metabolism is not going up during puberty. It's going down, 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 down. All right. Because it's so high, it's now kind of going to cruising altitude to adult levels. So teenagers who are eating 2 or 3 dinners, they are not having a sky high metabolism. Their metabolism is settling down to adult range. All right. Not what we thought. Now, from the age of 20 to 60, all right, that's the key for adulthood. It turns out human metabolism is hardwired not to change one bit. It is flat. That means that 60 can be the new 20 if you follow your hardwired metabolism. Amazing. All
Did you
right.
all hear that? There's the debunk. Like that's the truth. And I think any adult listening to this right now, that's new news, right? You're completely um, proving that this is not what we believed for so long. So go on.
Right.
Sorry.
And the way to get, don't forget, the way that this research was done to find that result is by removing excess body fat. When you
Wow.
put that extra body fat back in, it shuts down the metabolism. So what happens is not that a slow metabolism causes you to gain weight. It is the other way around.
Mm.
Excess body fat slows your metabolism. Now, by the age of the fourth phase is when you're 60 to 90, they found that metabolism does slow down a little bit, only by about 17%. So by the time you're 90, if you're lucky enough to make the 90 or beyond, your metabolism is going to be, should be the same as it was when, only 17% lower than it was when you were 60 or 20. All right. Okay. So what is the implication of all this? The implication of all this incredible discovery, is that human metabolism is hardwired. We're all born with the same operating system, and we're all supposed to go through these four phases. And what makes us different, what makes our metabolism all over the map, is body fat. Because when you add extra body fat at any age, 5 years old, 10 years old, 18 years old, 21, 30, 40, 50, 60, all right, when you throw in extra body fat, what it does is it actually puts a drag on the metabolism, and the metabolism slows down. So it is not that you are born with a slow metabolism and so therefore you gain extra weight. It is that the extra weight that you gain slows down your metabolism. It's completely the reversal of the script that we thought. Okay,
So good.
why is that good news? That is good news, Erica, because it means that we can do something about our metabolism. It is not the, oh no, there's nothing I can do. It is the, wow, if that's the situation, how do I fight my extra body fat so my metabolism that's hardwired can rise to the surface?
Absolutely brilliant. I mean, absolutely brilliant. I think so. Talking about what derails metabolism is our fat, but there is, I would love if you could explain, because there is types of fat. There is good fat, and then there's the excess of bad fat. So, can you differentiate the difference between that, and why, what do we need to know about fat so we could really understand what we're carrying on our body?
Yeah, great. So, look, Erica, all of us have grown up most of our lives with this idea that, fat's not a good thing, right? So, if you go to, whether you look, this happens to all of us, even me. You step out of the shower in the morning, you're drying yourself off. What do you see in the corner of your eye? You see a reflection of your naked body in the mirror. And we all find lumps and bumps of things that we don't want to see there, right? So you curse yourself, and then what do? You step on the scale. If that
Mm.
number isn't the number that you were hoping for, it's another curse word, and you go, man, I got to get in better shape, right? And you're associating your weight with your body fat, with your habits and your diet and your lifestyle. And yes, they are connected, but what we now know is that, first of all, body fat's incredibly important, because our healthy fat, before we talk about bad fat, let's talk about healthy fat. We all need a certain amount of fat in order to be able to survive. And in fact, when was fat formed in our body? Surprisingly, it was when we were still in the womb.
Mm.
When we were just a ball of cells, a few weeks of just balls of cells. The first organ that forms is our circulation. All right. Now that makes sense,
I didn't
because
know
all the
about
organs need
that.
circulation. Then nerves form, because nerves are like the electrical wires that connect our organs. You need instructions. That makes sense too. Do you know that the third major organ that forms is our body fat? Body fat is the third thing that forms. And yes, you didn't hear me. You heard me correctly. I didn't misspeak. The third organ that forms is our body fat. And our body fat that is formed when we were in our mom's womb is an organ.
Mm.
Now, when you say, well, what do you mean an organ? Isn't fat just padding? Yes, it is. Fat is padding, but fat is an organ. It functions like an organ. The fat that forms in the beginning is formed like bubble wrap around our blood vessels. And you go, wait a minute. What do you mean? I can't see my fat around my blood vessels. Precisely. The fat that is healthy is a fat that you usually can't see. It's wrapped around your blood vessels. There's a little bit, packed in different parts of your body. And what does this healthy fat do? It is the fuel tank for the energy that we need for our metabolism. So when we eat food, it goes into our mouth, gets absorbed through our stomach into our bloodstream. And guess what? Our healthy fat cells, which are our fuel tanks, are waiting there with a catcher's mitt, waiting for that energy to be deposited into the fuel tank. Fat's our fuel tank, Food is our fuel. When we eat them, that goes right into our fuel tank to store. So our fat cells store our fuel. We need that to be able to do the dishes, to do the laundry, to go for a walk, to be able to talk on the telephone, to do this interview. We actually need healthy fat to be able to do the basic activities. Now, and for health, you need it for health. Now, what happens when you lower your body fat, like way low? Think about the woman bodybuilder, okay,
I was
or
going to
the
ask
women
you about this. Yes.
triathlete. You go down to 5%, 3%, 2%, body weight. What happens? Your bones start getting weaker. You start being fatigued.
Hormones.
Hormones go out of whack. It's
Mhm.
terrible. And
Yeah.
that's because your fat is, in addition to being a store tank, and you can't store energy if you got too low, it also is a endocrine organ, meaning it releases its own hormones. And fat makes hormones that control our brain, our emotions, our willingness to eat food. Look, our healthy body fat at the fuel tank is like it helps our brain work like a gas gauge in your car. You're driving a car, you don't think about your gas until the fuel tank goes towards empty. Once it starts going towards empty, all of a sudden you're like, I got to find a filling station. Where's the nearest one, right? And so, and then you fill up. That's how our healthy fat works with our metabolism. Our metabolism needs energy, needs fuel, needs food, which gets stored in our fat to be able to run the engine. Okay, now, so when does fat become unhealthy?
Right.
Well, the fat that we can see in the mirror, that thing that when you step out naked in the morning and you're looking in the corner of the mirror, the fat that you see is on the outside of your body, is called subcutaneous fat. It's colored white. It's called white fat, actually, and it's the stuff that is the muffin top, the fat in your thighs, the fat in your butt, fat under your arms, the double chin. That is white fat. It's subcutaneous. Subcutaneous means under the skin, so you can actually see it. All right. Um, White fat, that kind of fat, also is inside the tube of your body, because our body, whether you got a big tube or a small tube, thin person or a big person, you've got interior fat. That kind of fat is called visceral fat. Viscer means gut. So this is the fat you can't see. It's stuffed around your guts.
Mhm.
That can grow really fast if you overeat or if you eat the wrong foods. And when you overgrow, the healthy fuel tanks, they outstrip their blood supply. Now, the fuel tanks need circulation as well. And when you've got too much of it, it's starving because it's growing too fast for its blood supply. And when it's starving, guess what happens? Inflammation is triggered.
Mm.
Now, when you grow your extra fat, you are sparking inflammation, like pouring gasoline into the middle of your body to light your body on fire with inflammation. And that is harmful body fat. Visceral fat is dangerous fat. Even skinny people, this is the study of women, like 3,000 women who were skinny. They had normal or skinny body size. If they had extra body fat, which you can measure with a DEXA scan,
Mhm.
all right, they actually had a twofold higher instance of developing breast cancer.
Oh,
And the
wow.
reason is because, and these are skinny people,
Yeah.
not people that are overtly obese. Their BMIs are normal. Okay, this shows you how dangerous this inflammatory body fat is. Inflammation is a trigger for cancer. All
Right.
right, and by the way, we know this for breast cancer because it's been studied for women with skinny fat with more skinny fat with breast cancer. But it's also been shown that excess body fat sets you up at risk for all kinds of other cancers: colon, lung, breast, liver, kidney, lots and lots of other types of cancer. Very dangerous. That's the link between having too much harmful body fat versus the right amount that you need for your hormones, and for your basic energy needs. So now I've just talked about the harmful body fat, right? There's
Right.
also a hero body fat, a different color. I just talked about white fat, subcutaneous. There's a different one that's called brown fat. Now, brown fat, I want you people watching this and listening to this to think about fat like colors of paint. If you ever had to do a renovation of or a repainting of a room in your house, and you've decided to paint your room two colors, you're going to go to the paint store and the hardware store, and you're going to be going to the swatches and picking out different colors. So when Mother Nature created fat, she basically picked up, white fat, white paint. I'm going to bring a couple of cans of that, and then brown paint, and take home a couple of. Now, so brown fat's the other kind of fat. Brown fat is all good, all good. And brown fat isn't lumpy bumpy like the muffin top or the thigh fat. Brown fat is, in fact, wafer thin. It's like paper. And it's not found under the skin, so you can't see the brown fat. It is close to the bone.
Mm.
So there's a kind of fat called brown fat that's paper thin, plastered close to your bone. It's around your neck, under your rib cage, a little bit under your arms, like a girdle, like a bra, a little bit scattered in your belly. And what does brown fat do? Brown fat lights up like the gas jets of your stovetop if you cook with gas. Okay. And you know what you do? Like, so all of you, if you want to boil some water, make some soup. What do you do when you go to your kitchen? You go to your stove, you turn the knob, click, 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 whoosh, right? Now, on your stovetop, that flame that you're going to cook with comes from the gas lines or maybe a gas tank, right? And that's the fuel to light the flames. And you're going to burn down the fuel. In your body, when your brown fat goes click, 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 whoosh, that flame, okay, it's called thermogenesis, thermal, because it's burning fuel. That fuel that the brown fat draws from is from your harmful white fat. Brown fat burns down the excess fuel from your white fat. So you can burn harmful fat by using good fat to burn down bad fat. Fat versus fat. And the brown fat actually burns down that, and you can eat foods that can actually turn that trigger on.
So brilliant. Okay, so I think we just learned a lot more about fat on our body and what it's there for. And the fact that you talked about when people obviously drop to a very low fat percentage, that's harmful as well as the excess. So there has to be this medium ground, but understanding what the purpose of fat is and the bad fat is so super important. So thank you for going really deep into that. So let's talk about, just to kind of pivot with what you just shared, the brown fat. So I'm sure a lot of people have heard this about cold therapy, how it turns on your brown fat. And that's why you will literally burn fat by just doing 3 minutes of cold exposure. And I think this is one of the powerful ways to turn on brown fat. But as you mentioned, there's also foods. So we'll definitely go into that. But yeah, can you kind of explain, like, this is like kind of like our internal mechanism that actually helps us get rid of this unhealthy body fat?
Yeah, no, I'd love to. It's one of my favorite topics. So first of all, I used to be a skeptic about cold plunges. First
Mm.
of all, because I don't like to actually go in super cold water myself for a long period of time, right? Who does, right? But I will tell you, it actually is really healthy. The cold plunges actually work. And let me kind of take you back to how brown fat was discovered, because it's absolutely fascinating. We knew brown fat existed from animals, specifically hibernating animals. And there
Mm.
was a zoologist dating back into the 19th century who was looking at a hibernating animal called a Swiss marmot, an alpine marmot. Now, a marmot's like a little woodchucky looking thing. It would hibernate. So what do hibernating animals do? Think about it. They eat, 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 eat. They go from like normal sized animals to big pudgy animals, and then they burrow away in the cold. Now, so we never understood why that was and how that worked. But then these early 19th century researchers started to dissect the animals to try to learn. Right, this is what we used to do. We don't do it anymore. We do it, but they used to do it, and they discovered that in the alpine marmot, between the shoulder blades, there was this little brown nugget that was fat. All right, I didn't really know it was fat at the time, but they called it a hibernoma because they thought this was like a little tumor that was only there when it was hibernating. That's when they could actually find it, because during the regular summer season they couldn't find that thing. All right, and what we now know, and this was discovered in the 1930s at UCLA, is that little nugget in those animals, in hibernating animals, is brown fat. All right. Now, so think about what's happening. Animals are loading up on their fat, and then they wiggle their way into the little icy cave. Winter sets in. They need energy. Where do they get their energy? They're not eating in the winter. they're
Right.
getting their energy from the stored fat in the storage compartments and the fuel tanks that we talked about just a moment ago. And how do they stay warm? How come they don't freeze to death? Ha! Because the brown fat is actually being triggered by the cold weather. Cold triggers brown fat. The brown fat goes click, 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 whoosh, just like on your stovetop. And what is it doing? It's drawing down energy from the big fat storage fat cells that the animal chubbed out on, okay, during the fall, eating all those nuts and storing it. And that's how they make it through the winter. So
Mm.
we now know, fast forward, that in fact humans do have brown fat. Our brown fat isn't really between our shoulder blades. In fact, we used to think in kids that we could find it in newborns. There's a little nugget as well. But then we thought, humans are walking around thermostat controlled rooms. We don't need them. And in adults, we rarely see it. However, in the 1990s, once we developed a scan called a PET scan, we began discovering that people who are getting their PET scans, which looks for metabolism, in the winter or in cold temperatures, that they would actually light up something that was surprising. And when we figured it out what it was the brown fat. So cold temperatures fires up your brown fat. When your brown fat is fired up, like in a cold plunge, it is actually burning, click, 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 whoosh, drawing down fuel from your harmful white fat. And you are actually getting towards unleashing your inner metabolism. So it actually does work. Amazing.
It's so remarkable. And I think, I mean, anyone listening to this right now, that's proven of how it's going to help burn the unhealthy fat, which in then turn helps your metabolism, which then in turn reduces your inflammation and so on and so and improves your health. So there's many benefits to that. But as you talk in your previous book, as well as this book, it's about the foods that also contribute to helping our health, which you share that there's also foods that help can turn on the brown fat as well as ignite our metabolism. So if we could kind of dive into that, what would be like your 5 recommended staple foods? Because I know you have in your books listed like 150 different foods. And so obviously we can't go into the whole conversation of that in this interview, but I would love to know like your 5 most recommended that helps burn fat and also improves our metabolism and health at the same time, if you
Yeah.
could.
All right. First of all, I'm going to set the stage by
Yeah.
saying that I am somebody who studies food as medicine. And my vantage point is really how the body responds to what you put inside it. But I'm also somebody who really likes to cook. I really enjoy the culture of food. I wouldn't say I enjoy stuffing my face, but what I would tell you is I really respect and I enjoy the history and tradition of foods, particularly in the cultures that have been doing it for hundreds or thousands of years. And so I'm kind of a foodie like that. I like to walk the walk in addition to talk the talk. So when I talk about food, when I study food, I'm always thinking about like, would I like to eat that? Would that be good to eat? And so much about the food conversation for the health and wellness community has always been about elimination, deprivation, restriction, fear, guilt, and shame. That's really kind of like those are the things, the tags, that have gone along with food for years. I want to kind of flip the script on that. What I want to say is that my research shows that the foods that we love to eat, that are delicious and tasty, are well aligned with our health goals as well. So you can love your food to love your health. And when it comes to metabolism, many of the foods that are found in the delicious Mediterranean or Asian food cultures. I mean, who can't go out to a Mediterranean restaurant or an Asian restaurant? Pick your Asian restaurant: Chinese, Japanese, Thai, Mediterranean, Spanish, Italian, the south of France, Greek. Find something on the menu that they wouldn't love to have, right? Okay, so you never have to have traveled to actually have been exposed to this rich tradition of healthy, fresh, seasonal foods that are cooked in delicious ways. So that's really where the wellspring of these healthy brown fat acting foods come from. So I'll just come out with a couple of them on the Mediterranean side first. All right. And I'll try to give a little bit of tips on how I cook with them,
Yeah.
just to make it real. So the first thing that's amazing that activates brown fat are tomatoes. Tomatoes, which you would actually find in the Mediterranean, actually activate your brown fat. What activates brown fat? Lycopene. Lycopene in tomatoes not only helps your body fight cancer by starving cancers, cutting off their blood supply, it activates your brown fat as well, helps you burn down fat. How do we know this is true? A study that was done in Portugal was amazing. They took women who were in college or grad school with normal, healthy bodies. Okay, so a range. All right. They wanted to find out if they ate a tomato, what it would do to their body weight. So they gave them one tomato, just one, to eat
Mhm.
an hour before lunch. That's it. No special diet, no special exercise, no training, no gym classes, nothing. And they wanted to find out what one tomato would do. So they gave them to eat 1 hour before lunch every day for a month. And they found after 2 weeks of eating this daily pre lunch tomato that women who are eating the tomatoes would start to lose weight. And in fact, over a month, the women who ate just one tomato a day lost about 2 pounds compared to the women who didn't eat a tomato. All right. Now you go, well, 2 pounds is not very much. That's one tomato. And when they
Mhm.
figured out what it was doing, it was activating their brown fat. Click, 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 whoosh. One tomato. Can you imagine that? One tomato would have this effect. And by the
Wow.
way, studies at Tufts University have figured out where lycopene goes after you eat foods with lycopenes, like tomato. When you eat like a tomato, lycopene goes down into your stomach. It goes in your bloodstream. You know where it goes first? It goes into your belly fat. The lycopene lodges in your belly fat, goes to work. Then where does it go next? It goes to your thighs, your thigh fat. Then where does it go after that? It goes to your butt. Like lycopene, this likes to dissolve in fat and oil. So once it's in your body, it goes right to where it needs to go, kind of like a heat-seeking missile, and it
Hmm.
sits there, basically lighting up your brown fat to burn down the fat in those areas. So that's the power of tomatoes. All right. Now, what else can you actually find? Olives and olive oil can actually trigger on your brown fat. Citrus, grapefruits can actually do it, and
Hmm.
oranges and lemons can also trigger brown fat. Leafy greens, kale, dinosaur kale. By the way, dinosaur kale, most people are tired of thinking about a salad. I don't want another salad of kale. All right. Although I do like kale salads. But if you imagine, dinosaur kale, also called Tuscan kale,
Mhm.
is got pebbly leaf on it. You can find it in a lot of markets now. You know that's the kind of kale that is used to make minestrone soup.
No,
You
I
know
would.
minestrone soup, when you actually stir it around, there's these little dark
Uh-huh.
pieces on it. That's dinosaur kale,
Okay.
lactacino kale, Tuscan kale, dinosaur kale cut up, and now you can see Mediterranean dish, little tomato, little kale, and beans, white beans. Another great food. I don't know if you've had Italian or Tuscan beans or
Hmm.
Greek beans, gigante beans, cooked in a little tomato, simmered in a little tomato broth. Amazing tasting stuff. Beans actually also can light up your metabolism by shrinking your visceral fat. How do we know that beans can shrink your visceral fat? Well, a study out of the University of Toronto looked at this. They took men that were overweight or obese, and they gave them one can of pre-cooked beans that you would get out of the middle aisle of any grocery store, white beans, okay, like navy beans, and they fed them one can of beans 5 days out of 7 days a week. That's it. And what they did is they measured their waist size, and they found that the men who were eating the can of beans compared to the people who got placebo, they shrank their waistline by an inch. That's the body tube. When you got lots of visceral fat, stretches an inch. When you shrink it, it shrinks by an inch. Belt size, think waist size. Can you fit in a pair of pants? That's how we know that these substances with their bioactives, natural chemicals, light up the brown fat to start shrinking you. And I can so we just went through some Mediterranean ones. I could go through Asian foods. We could talk
There's
about
so many.
Japanese, Chinese, Vietnamese foods. This is the whole point. The good news is that the foods that we love to eat, we're now beginning to know improve our metabolism, burn down harmful body fat by lighting up our good fat to burn down bad fat. Click, 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 whoosh, and unleash our inner metabolism so we can rise to the surface where your body wants it to be.
That's so amazing. And I know you speak about this in your other book, but I'm curious, does this apply also for our metabolism and burning fat? You talk about coffee, green tea, cacao, bean. great things to add into our days. And also, this is my favorite that I have every single day when I have my coffee is cinnamon. So
Yeah.
with all the ones I mentioned, is that also very helpful for igniting that brown fat? Because I know it has other tremendous benefits, but would this also go into shrinking our visceral fat?
Yeah. Well, I'm like you, Erica. I love coffee. I love tea. I love chocolate, dark chocolate. I love cinnamon. And when you get into the fall season, it just like this feels like it's part of getting into the season, to use cinnamon for things. But there are cultures in the Mediterranean that use cinnamon for all kinds of foods. You can roast with it, you can cook roast with it, you can actually add it to stews. It's an amazing spice. Okay. So since we don't have time to go into the biochemistry of every single food,
Yeah.
what I want people listening to know is that scientists like me have actually figured out what are the chemicals inside, natural chemicals inside these foods that will actually do the job. The job being lighting up your brown fat and lighting up your health defenses as well. So all of these foods, coffee, tea, chocolate, cinnamon, they improve our circulation, they improve our stem cells so we can regenerate, they're good for our gut health. They help protect our DNA and they lower inflammation while they boost our immunity. And they also trigger our brown fat to help us improve our metabolism so we can burn down harmful white fat as well. Some of the surprises, Erica, by the way, we all know green tea is good, but
Yeah.
do you know that the surprise when it comes to metabolism is that black teas can also be good? Earl Grey, for example. Or here's one of my favorites. It's called pu'er tea. I don't know if you ever heard of. Have you ever had pu'er tea?
No.
It's spelled it's spelled Pu apostrophe er.
Oh,
Pu'er is
yes.
a village in southwest China. Okay, it's a smoky tea. It's usually drank after a dinner as a digestive because it helps digestion. It's a very I love the taste of pu'er tea. Anybody who's curious should really try it. And it comes in these little bricks that you break apart and you soak a piece of the brick. It's kind of smoky. It's interesting. Like that cigar kind of concept.
Mm,
This is the healthy version of it. You get this nice smoky flavor, and it really helps you digest a meal. Okay, this actually is a fermented tea that goes back 2,000 years. This was a tea that was initially fermented so that it wouldn't degrade like green tea would when they took it on camelback to trade on the Silk Road. And so this smoky fermented tea developed its own bacteria called puer bacillus. So this is actually a probiotic tea.
mm,
And it's been shown that when you have puer, it actually is good for gut health. Gut health is good for metabolism, good for your lipid control, and it lights up your brown fat and can help you shrink your waist size as well. So studies have been done in humans looking at puer tea, and if you don't want to have a brick that you need a hammer to bust open to, that there are ways of buying puer tea in that's already been powderized. It's a powder, and you can just pour it into a cup, pour some water in it, and no fuss, no muss, no tea bag, and you just kind of sip it. So that's an example of tea as well. Tea and coffee, by the way, if you want to get the best benefits out of it, this is what I tell you. Don't put dairy into it, cow dairy. You can use soy milk, almond milk, those are fine. But dairy fat, cow fat, actually binds to the good polyphenols in both coffee and tea. And you remove some of it, it doesn't get absorbed as easily into your bloodstream. So, and don't put added sugar in and things. That actually kind of spoils the milk, so to speak. It actually takes something good and makes it less good for you. But if you have tea straight on, coffee straight on, and chocolate, darker the better. 80% or higher is what I encourage. And cinnamon's good on anything that you like it on. That is all great stuff for your metabolism and your overall health.
I love it. I love it. I consume it all. But I haven't tried that tea yet, but I'm going to look into that. Also, you skimmed over earlier in the interview DEXA scan, and I want to touch on this because I actually gifted my partner a DEXA scan. He has it scheduled, I think, in a week or two. And I love gifting people something that helps their health. I think that's honestly a way to say like I love you. So I gift books like your books. I DEXA scan supplements. Like I'm all about it. But one thing that a lot of people don't know is that obviously when you step on a scale, there are some scales that will say like how much fat or body, your water percentage and whatnot, but DEXA scan is very specific, and it actually shows, if I'm correct, it shows your bone mass, it shows your visceral fat, water, and all these things. And you could actually, which I'll even plug in where I found it, but you could find somewhere locally to do it. It takes like 15 minutes, and it's very low in cost to just find out such great information. But a lot of people don't even realize, especially the skinny fat people, if you want to say, because we know if you're overweight, you know you have excess body fat, obviously, but the skinnier people that have that extra layer of fat that possibly they don't know. So what is like the sure, how could somebody tell, besides getting a DEXA scan, tell that they have this unhealthy fat and
Okay.
then addressing
Yeah.
it?
So first of all, you are so on target, Erica, with what you just said.
Thank you.
Visceral fat, you have no idea until you actually do a scan like a DEXA scan. You step on a scale, a regular scale, bathroom scale, you're measuring water, you're weighing your bones, you're measuring your muscle. It doesn't tell you how much fat you really have. I mean, weightlifters step on a scale, they've got bulky muscles. That's actually going to count on the scale as well. So if you really want to get down to your body fat, and you want to know how much visceral, harmful body fat is inside your tube, regardless of your body size, you need to do a DEXA scan. But a lot of people don't know that there's some other subtle ways that you should know about as well. So it turns out that for people who are skinny, the ones who say, "Yeah, I don't need to go on a diet. Look at me. I can eat anything." All right, and yet some of those people eat a lot of junky food. And they're also overeating, and so they are actually developing lots of extra visceral fat, harmful inflammatory visceral fat inside a skinny tube. Thin tube is overstuffed, and it becomes dangerous, just like anything else. How can you tell? What's a telltale sign of that you're developing extra fat? Where do you think in the body, Erica, you would actually get your the first sign of extra fat?
So I already know the answer. So because I've watched a lot of your
All right.
interviews,
Okay.
I
So
won't
I will.
answer this.
Oh, so you don't want to divulge it. Let me just tell you that it's not your belly, it's not your butt, not your thighs. Okay, it's not under your arms. The first place that extra fat grows, visceral fat, is in your tongue.
Yeah, it's so
Your tongue
fascinating.
gets fat first. Now, I got to explain that because it's a surprise to a lot of people. If you look at the anatomy of the tongue comes in three pieces. So if you actually had to get a Lego set of fat, to build up the Legos of your tongue, it'd be like three different sections. The first part of your tongue is very muscular and agile. Think about it. Your tongue, tip of your tongue is like a Cirque du Soleil. It can do all kinds of fancy things. The middle of your tongue is actually got some fat. It's got some muscle, it's really intended to be not agile, but to really move things around. The middle of your tongue is what moves the food around from the left to the right, to your molars, to the front, to the back. All right, that's the part. It's kind of muscly, but not as agile as the front. The back of the tongue, which is what allows the food to slide down to your stomach. All right, down your esophagus to your stomach. Back of the tongue is like a bean bag. It is intentionally made with visceral fat, mostly fat. All right. It's about 30% fat. And so, in fact, when a skinny person starts to gain extra visceral fat, one of the first places that it starts to build up is in the back of the tongue. It's already got a lot of visceral fat, so you start building it up there. Now, how can you tell if a skinny person is building up their visceral fat? Most people don't measure their tongues. That's true, but their bed partners, their sleeping partners, might notice that they're starting to snore. Now, how does that make sense? Well, look, when you're sleeping, you're relaxed. And when you're relaxed, your tongue is relaxed. And when your fat tongue is relaxed, it's fat, it's actually going to block the back of your throat. And guess what you're going to do? You're going to start to snore.
Right.
So, one of the first telltale signs that somebody is growing skinny fat, doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, okay, is your bed partner might say, "Hey, you know what? Did you know that you're starting to snore?" And they might say, "Yeah, and you know what? I'm also starting to gain a little weight." So, this is the telltale sign. No DEXA scan needed. If you're noticing in your bed partner that they're starting to snore, they never did it before. There's a lot of reason for snoring, by the way, besides visceral fat. Sleep apnea is another one, but it's one of those telltale signs that might be time to actually check yourself out. And getting a DEXA scan is one of the ways to do it.
Yeah, it's so, so good. And so one other thing that people might be wondering is like, if they're consuming the good fats, the olive oils, as you talked about, actually ignites your brown fat. But if they're consuming the healthy fats such as avocado and all these things, can somebody have too much? And then by having too much of this healthy fat, then it turns into excess fat and gaining the fat around their belly and all the areas they don't want.
Yeah, so this is a great question. What you're saying is that even if you eat healthy food,
Mm-hmm.
can you overdo it? And when you overdo it, does it actually help you? Does it actually grow harmful fat?
Mm-hmm.
The answer is yes, yes, yes. And here's the deal. Remember, I told you back that metabolism is our energy. It's how our body uses our fuel. And like your car uses fuel to drive, our body uses fuel to be able to operate, just to do the basic things: pick up a phone, uh, 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 cook a meal, go shopping. We need that stuff just to be able to operate. Okay, now what do we call our fuel? Well, in our car we call it gallons, right? How many in America? If you're abroad, in America we call it gallons. That's and you figure out how far you get with your mileage with miles per gallon. When you look at your fuel gas choices, when you go to the gas station, you look at the cost per gallon, right? Now, we know that we all have a choice of fuel. You can have high quality fuel, you could have low quality fuel. In regardless of whether you get high quality or low quality fuel, you'll still fill up the tank the same way. You'll still fill up the fuel tank. So think about that. Now with food, we all have a choice between low quality food, ultra processed food, manufactured food, artificial chemicals, flavorings, colorings, you name it, artificial sweeteners, or higher quality fuel, fresh whole foods that we can actually eat, or even dried foods that are made from whole foods without a lot of chemicals to it. All right, so we have a choice: high quality fuel, low quality fuel. And if you put low quality fuel in your car will be okay for a couple of times. But if you put only low quality fuel in, week out, month in, month out, guarantee your car is not going to run as long or as well as the person who puts in consistently higher quality fuel into their car. All right. Same deal with the body. Now, however, I told you that regardless of low or high quality, when you put in fuel, you're going to be filling up the gas tank. So your body's going to be filling up your body fat, the fuel tanks, with calories, with foods, no matter what you do, high quality or low quality. Now, so regardless of it, you can overeat high quality foods as well. You will build extra body fat, white fat, and visceral fat. And the more you build up, remember we talked about the hibernating animal. The
Yeah.
hibernating animal is obsessed with loading up for the winter. Doesn't matter if you're skinny or you're a big bodied person. If you start cranking up the volume of food, even the healthy food, you can overdo it and you'll be like that hibernating woodchuck, the alpine marmot, storing up on fat. And that's not what we want to do. For us, we want to actually keep a healthy, moderate amount of fat by eating a healthy, moderate amount of high quality food. Fuel in our tank, fill up your tank, but don't overflow your tank. By the way, here's another example, just a little example I think people remember. You don't want to be overflowing your tank. Because think about it. Even if you took high quality fuel, if you put the nozzle into your car and you just filled up the tank, normally what happens is the tank fills up, it goes click, and now the nozzle won't fill anymore. Imagine if you had no click and you just kept on pumping gas in. The gas would fill up, it would run out of the car, spill down the side of the car, pool around your shoes, and guess what? You'd be standing in a pile of gasoline, a dangerous, harmful, flammable mess. High quality or low quality food, you never want to overeat. It's just like overflowing your gas tank.
It's so important for people to know, because that's why we need to not only know, obviously, the foods that help our body, but we also know that even the good stuff can be there could be too much of a good thing, right? Uh, Gosh, there's so much. And so really, this kind of sums up that our fat, our unhealthy fat, really truly affects our metabolism, which in turn will affect us losing weight, because if our metabolism is slowed down, or if there's more inflammation because that excess bad fat, that will lead to then, going into your first book, disease, cancer, and all the things. And so ultimately, there is a reason not just to look good, but also for your health, to maintain, a healthy level of fat, if you want to say, on both ends. Like you can't be too low and you can't be too high. And so I think it's so there's so much to this, and there's so much wisdom you share in all I've listened to in your books. I truly think, again, as I mentioned, I think the best gift you could give somebody that you love is the gift of health. And so the wisdom that is shared today, share this. This is so brilliant. And I'm just Dr. William Li, I'm like so in awe of all you share, and also how you make it so understandable. Like we are like a car, just, like filling up our gas tank and like what it does. And, obviously if we want to be like a Ferrari, we need to put good quality gasoline so we could, be able to have the metabolism and energy to do the things we love. We're not going to treat it like a rental car that we just put in, the crap. So I think it's so great. So much. I just want to sum up I'm trying to think of it just to sum this up. Well, first of all, I want people to grab your books, but where else could people learn more about you? I know you have a newsletter that people should sign up to find out more. Of course, I'll plug this in the show notes, but what else? Where could we find more about you? Where is the best way to find the best content on you?
Yeah, well, first of all, come to my website. It's drdrwilliamli.com, Dr. William Li. And you can follow me on social, all the usual platforms. My handle is at Dr. Dr. William Li, Li. And I just look for the verified little blue thing and you'll know exactly who I am. I try to get information out to people, news you can use, especially with food because it's got such immediacy. I also, for people who are really serious about following this trail of information, I do free master classes periodically. And if you're really ready to change your life, I do an online course, which is really, get you to commit to actually really learning deep dive. I talk about the foods, the doses, the preparation, what you need to do in the kitchen. It's all about how do you actually make things practical and everyday for your health, because health is an everyday thing. It's not something that you need to wait for. It's something that you should be doing like a reflex every single day.
That what you just stated right there, I think is really key, is that we don't just suddenly get cancer. We don't suddenly get a disease. It happens over time, over months or potentially years. And it really could start as early as your teenager years. So there's no better time than now to take control of your health. And again, perfect gift. Or gift to yourself, maybe that would be a wise thing, is getting your course to really dive deep, because there's no better time than now. So Dr. William Li, I'm so honored. I just love this conversation. And this was phenomenal, but I do want to ask you my closing question that I ask all my guests. If you were to share a piece of wisdom, a life lesson that you believe you need to shout out to everybody right now that they need to hear, what would that piece of wisdom be and why?
I would actually tell people to choose the foods that they love that are healthy and start with that. Eat more of that, because if you are eating the things that you love that are healthy, you're already way ahead of the game. Don't stress. Don't stress. Do what's natural for you and listen to your body.
Love it. So good. Thank you so much. I'm so honored for making the time to share all this wisdom today. Appreciate you, and be blessed.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.